Hello and welcome to episode 7 of The Dirty Corner. So far we have discussed different types of bullying, inappropriate behaviour, poor quality education, and just touching on some of the bad experiences that I had at art school. In fact, the last episode was the graffiti on the walls and how that was used to intimidate students, and quite unpleasant. But the episode before that was more extreme bullying where someone even left the school. And I've been providing videos and actually I don't think I've shown any videos yet. I've been providing emails. I have videos prepared. So the next episode I will be showing a video. Videos are tricky. I've got to kind of prepare them and be careful so that it's not exposing the identity of anyone involved or the school. So I'm trying to be very careful about how I do it. However, I am going to, without censoring, read out in this episode the comments left underneath the different episodes. So this episode is going to be called Viewer Comments. I'm going to start from episode 1, and I think this is in order, but if it's not, then forgive me, but I'm going to try to read out the comments as I've saved them. So I have from user-GT80J1BC2Z. As artists, I think we've all had negative experiences with our art, even in or out of art school. I once had an art teacher in high school who threw a heavy steel/wood desk chair at me. So I wonder if it's one of those which is both steel frame and then it's got wooden back and seat. That's what I'm imagining. Threw the chair at them. I ducked and it went through a plate glass window, landed about 10 to 15 feet out in the yard, and unfortunately for him, right in front of the superintendent. Needless, he was fired on the spot. Me, it took years before I did art of any sort again. Can you imagine what that's like? Having an art teacher in high school throw a pretty significant weighted chair, a substantial threat to injure severely the student, and it go through a window and thankfully land not too far from a superintendent who could then use their authority to fire that faculty member. That's horrifying. Unstable people in charge of young students, direction and education in life. It's really unacceptable and unbelievable that these things happen. So we didn't have anything like that in art school, not in university anyway, that I'm discussing. There was bits of violence, there was sexual assault, and there was bullying and harassment and vandalism and theft. We covered the graffiti, the intimidation, and then there was corruption from the tutors. This is all alleged by me because that's from my vantage point anyway. That's what I feel I experienced at the school. I can't say it's a hard fact because I can only make my case and there will be another side to the story, but that's what I'm trying to present is the reason why I think that's the case. Someone called Love Jesus 777 J77 said, Jesus is coming back. Believe he died for your sins and rose again, then repent to be saved. Thank you for the comment. So that was actually a reply to the first comment that I read. I obviously replied with a bit more of an appropriate response, but there we are. My friend Gwen Lewis 4443 left the comment. There are a host of reasons why art college experiences can be troubling. Usually I would say that the issues mainly stem from art education and the art world being in a perpetual state of crisis. I haven't heard of abuse from fellow students before. Were there no tutors around? It is a crime to vandalise someone else's property. At the very outside, there would have been an institutional rule about that, with the risk of disciplinary action. I know you didn't have concrete proof that this was anything other than an accident. However, taken in context, it's fishy. It doesn't sound like it was a safe environment for anyone to create or preserve their work. It goes back to how the course was being run. I hope you find making this podcast cathartic. I always appreciate Gwen's comments. I do think they're always very heartfelt and sweet, and very reasonable and balanced as well. But let me see. As far as the comment about, I would usually say that the issues mainly stem from art education and the art world being in a perpetual state of crisis is quite a poignant way of wording that, and I do agree that currently fine art specifically is in a state of crisis, and has been for, I would say, the best part of a century. That's my opinion, and that opinion was formed because of what I found through my art education at university, and not just the lack of education, but the things that they were pushing led a lot of students to look things up of why things are so imbalanced and skewed as far as what they consider to be legitimate fine art, as opposed to what they would call illustration, but would be just classical fine art painting or sculpture. And then the comment about were there no tutors around. This was a comment that was left under the first episode where I mentioned that I'd given a collection of drawings that I'd made for an event, not for an event, during an event, and one of the returning students had asked if they can scan those and use them for their, I don't know, project of some kind of documenting the evening, and I gave them to them, and then when I found that they'd been returned to the studio, they were all over the floor with footprints on. Now I cleaned off the footprints and things from the paper, and you can only slightly see remnants of damage, but it was a disregard for my work. That was nothing compared to other things which happened to students' work, and I will cover that in an episode soon where actual real damage happened to people's finished paintings and work. And it was, in my view, clearly targeted, and I will make that case soon. And I don't think there were many tutors around not to actually witness the things that were happening. But I'm of the opinion that if the tutors were around, they had such preference for certain people that if they said, what's happening, they would be able to lie their way out of it, or even... you see, there's a story I'd like to tell about what one student did. I'm going to do an episode soon about psychological torment that was targeted towards an older student, a bloke in his mid-70s. I'm pretty sure he'd want to come on the podcast actually and talk about this. Maybe not this story that I'm going to tell, but about his experience, because he doesn't even know the story. He's asked to not be told about what people planned for him at the school. So I don't want to upset him by letting him know. But I am going to discuss it at some point in a careful way in the future about what some students had discussed and shared with other students about what they were having as an idea of targeting him with bullying, and even tutors were aware of this and did nothing, because they are, in my view, not good people and corrupt in the sense of morally and ethically corrupt. But yeah, a great comment from Gwen as always, and I agree about there should have been disciplinary action for vandalism or bullying or anything like that. But sadly that didn't happen. Not to the people who were doing the bullying and vandalism anyway. Okay, a comment from my friend Mike Davies 313. Simon, big on you for this, but I think hanging on to negative stuff from the radical non-art wankers from Wrexham Uni isn't doing anyone any good. I got the least to open the gallery next month. Bring your stuff along and we will see what we can do. And then there's a response from Gwen Lewis 4443 saying, "You got a gallery, Mike? ? Mike does got a gallery. Mike has a gallery. He opened it on Saturday. It's currently Monday when I'm recording this, even though this will be uploaded on Thursday. So if it's Monday the 29th, then it was Saturday the 27th that he opened, Saturday the 27th that he launched the gallery, Oriel Chroma Gallery it's called, in Moston, at the Abercan site there. It's joined to the wool shop. It's kind of an appendix on the end of the wool shop. It's a lovely little spot and he's doing really well. It looks great in there. So Mike briefly experienced Wrexham Uni and he has left a comment, and I appreciate his support and his reflection on it. And we talked about this before I left him a comment in response, saying that it's not something that I'm hanging on to negative stuff, and it is, as Gwen said, it is cathartic to discuss this at length, because I did, my very first podcast was called Studio Buddies, and I did discuss some of the things that were happening, but not in the same way that I'd like to now, because at the time I was still in uni and I was trying to cast doubt on my experiences and talk about it with a bit more of a kind of light-hearted approach, when in reality it was pretty serious what was happening there. There's another comment from the L Love Jesus 777J77, but it's the same sort of thing and it goes on quite a bit. So if you want any scripture reading to you can have a look at the comments on episode 1. A couple of comments there. But I appreciate Mike leaving a comment, and Gwen, and I have some artwork in Mike's gallery, and there are currently 3 other artists in there, I think. And hopefully Gwen's work will be in there soon, so she'll be the 4th. And there may even be 5 soon. He's packing them in. It looks great. Okay, so that's it for episode 1, because I left a big long reply to Mike about how, I'll just read the last part. I appreciate your comment and look forward to working with you on your new gallery. Fun times ahead. Thanks. That is true. I did see him on Saturday. I did a bit of filming. I put up my work, and I'm really looking forward to visiting there periodically, and I think I might start teaching there on Tuesdays. Let's see how that goes. Now on episode 2, what was episode 2? I should really bring up the episode list. If episode 1 was They Stepped on My Art, then episode 2 was Is It Okay to Kill People? Yeah, such a depressing point in my university experience, hearing that question get posed to all of the tutors and then failing to respond in an adequate way. And the best response was, the answer's no, but it could be an interesting question in a sense. But it just wasn't expanded upon, even though I appreciate the tutor saying no at all. So the comment from Gwen Lewis 4443, my friend Gwen, said, "Thank you, Simon. It is mind-boggling that where art college teaching jobs are like gold, and there are so many well-qualified people around, you ended up with a WAG, which is wife and girlfriend, and someone's cronies. The course absolutely needs a review. Such a shame that you went there. And it is true. The wife and girlfriend she's referring to is the dean's wife, was the head tutor for the art course, the fine art course, and it was not deserved at all. It was a real injustice that she was doing that, because it was a horrible environment that she had cultivated there by nurturing the bullies and neglecting the honest, hard-working students. And then I put, I appreciate that, Gwen. I feel as though if you and I were given these positions tomorrow, we could offer more to the cohort than they are with the current faculty. Gwen responded, thank you. Yes, and others besides. Knowledgeable, experienced, caring, professional, hard-working and constantly growing. People who should be in those jobs who end up doing other jobs just to keep body and soul together. That's very true. I know someone who is a substitute teacher, and she is an artist, and she should have been a tutor at the school, because she was talented and fun, but also had an experimental edge to her, and would have really injected a lot of life into one of those courses where it was stagnant when I went there, and it was really uninspired. But yeah, then I respond with, this type of thing which I said. I feel like history will look back at this time as a huge misstep in education, is how I end my comment. And then Gwen leaves a reply saying, sadly, courses will be terminated and departments shut down because they don't deliver. Which I would prefer over what I experienced to continue. And then Gwen leaves another comment, because she's such a great friend that she really engages with the subject. She said, killing people to make art is called snuff. Makes me think of Cronenberg's Videodrome. Thing is, no one had to die to make that movie. If you've not seen Videodrome by David Cronenberg, I think it's a great film. I really like it. It's very dark in ways, but I really like David Cronenberg's style and the edge that those films have. But she's absolutely right about it being called snuff. It's not something which I really thought about when I was discussing the question, is it okay to kill people to make art? And yeah, well called out by Gwen that's called the snuff film. And that's kind of the tone that the student had, really, was a kind of dark appreciation for things which I think should have been dealt with in a more professional way by the tutors, to put a stop to that kind of conversation, or to poke and prod the student until they justified that type of a comment or question, which they didn't do. Anyway, I thank Gwen for the comment, and then she leaves a reply saying, yes, it should be completely off limits to consider harming sentient beings of any kind to make art. Just thinking of that Damien Hirst work with the butterflies, I find it objectionable that his work was about capturing the butterflies within the work so that they died. He has done it with other creatures. I knew a girl doing a PhD in zoology, and she was researching moths. Her study had to be approved by an ethical committee because it involved living creatures. Wrexham University would almost certainly have an ethical committee. Why did none of the tutors mention that? This is the debate. What is the role of ethics in art? When do ethics become the enemy of creativity, if at all? I mean, that's before we get into the use of human subjects in art. Did you see that Balenciaga campaign last year? The adverts had to be pulled. It appeared to contain covert references to, I'm going to say, PDF file here, because I don't think you're allowed to verbally say the word on YouTube. Another amazing comment, and that was a response to what I said. So let me go through and respond to parts of that. Damien Hirst, I also find his work to be just unethical in ways that it shouldn't be tolerated or condoned in the art world, and it is a bit of a damning indictment of what fine art has become, that Damien Hirst gets to present living creatures that have been sacrificed for his work in the way that it has. But that is a strange kind of dark fascination that fine arts is going down, because it is in a state of crisis, like Gwen's comment on the first episode. As far as the ethical committee and where was it, I believe I may have met that committee when I proposed that we should have life drawing classes, and I think that my concern is that they were friends with people like the dean. There was some kind of connection there, and I could be wrong, but it felt very nepotistic again, as though everyone was somehow related and therefore invested in the longevity of the faculty, as it were, and to not stir things up. And I could be wrong there, because I don't actually have evidence of that, but to think that the amount of trouble that happened at that school went overlooked even when it was reported made me suspicious that something else was happening. And then the questions of this is the debate: what is the role of ethics in art? When do ethics become the enemy of creativity, if at all? Great questions. I mean, imagine you're in art school and these become what we discuss. That would have been really good. There was nothing as considered or as academic as that touched upon at all. And then when she asked, this is Gwen, when she asked in the comment, did you see the Balenciaga campaign last year? The adverts had to be pulled. It was disturbing. It was children's fashion. I think it was even child models, like children who were models. And it would be weird kind of fashion, but you could kind of get away with weird fashion. But then they would have books, and the book was written by someone who had been convicted of a certain crime, that you just don't want that association with your advertising campaign. Maybe it was someone who thought they were edgy. I don't really know how people get these jobs and how it gets approved, but it does make it seem very suspicious that whatever steps are in place from conception to publication, no one stopped that from happening. So yeah, I mean, it's not something where I think, don't look up the Balenciaga campaign, just look it up, but I wouldn't look at someone's opinion video on it. I would just read an impartial description of what happened, because I think there will be a lot of people making videos saying this is what's going on and this exposes this, and I'd be very wary of that type of video where people are drawing conclusions from this, because to me it's a problem. It's a problem because of just the plain facts. Just reading the facts as it is, it's disturbing, and it's a damning indictment of the fashion industry, just like what I'm trying to present I believe to be a damning indictment of art school education, of fine art courses anyway. Well, the one which I experienced, I've heard stories of others, but I've also interviewed a lot of artists, and some of them say that their school wasn't experimental enough, and others say that, you know, you shouldn't rail against art schools because they're important. And I don't think any of those are wrong. I just think that if schools are doing what mine was doing, that's definitely a real problem that needs taking out. Now, I say joke, it's more of a light-hearted comment that I say that I went to the worst art school in the world. I'm sure there's worse, but it'd be hard to imagine. I mean, I've heard from someone about an attack that happened in a school, and I don't mean a shooter or anything. I mean, you know, a man attacking a woman in school, which, again, absolutely horrifying. And one of the stories that I'm going to share later on is going to brush up against something similar to that. So that's why I think as an accumulative effect, my school, in my brief time there, I think is a contender for one of the worst in the world as far as that course in the time that I experienced it. I think Gwen's next comment was in response to what I said. So I put a reply to her saying, I think you put it far better than I could have. It was a bizarre nightmare in several ways, but this question was asked when I was already exhausted with what had been happening for the last couple of years, and I don't mean COVID. I did see that, and I'm talking about the Balenciaga thing. It is unsettling to find that huge companies have, in quotations, creatives who try to smuggle in messaging into fashion campaigns for children. What a weird time we live in. And, right, okay, that's not actually relevant to the next comment that Gwen left, because she left another comment on the second episode, and I love that she does this because, again, an amazing reference. She said, Maria Abramovic made herself vulnerable to knives and a loaded gun in one of her performances. That wasn't harming others, though. Which I think Maria Abramovic is a bit of a controversial figure for certain artists because it challenges the conventions of fine art and how we consider art making to be performed or to be practiced or to be presented. And Maria Abramovic has very performance oriented. I say performance. Yeah, it kind of can seem performative in my memory of what I've seen of her work. And that's a category of fine arts which is quite challenging for me and several artists, even though I don't have any issue with her as ethically. I just think that her approach to fine art is, I mean, to say it's out there is kind of, it's just challenging in interesting ways. It's like watching an independent film. You know, Maria Abramovic's work would slot quite well into several films that I've watched, and I really enjoy films that are just challenging in that way. I responded to Gwen saying, good point. If she were to cross that line, and I put in brackets, of course she wouldn't, then I hope the academic community would denounce the performance instead of saying that it was somehow philosophically interesting. And then Gwen replied saying, I can't think of any performances where she has hurt others or even a living thing of any kind. Rather, she explores dark things by handing the baton to the viewer and making herself vulnerable, which is absolutely true. And if you're going to do something where violence or dark subject matter is to be explored, all precautions should be taken so that there are no animals or people hurt in any way. But that was all comments from episode 2, which is it okay to kill people? I know you may be thinking this is a long episode, but that was probably, or this next episode is probably the most comments I got, and then they get less and less as the episodes go on, which is not a good sign, but hopefully I will start to get better engagement again. So episode 3 was called Stop Drawing and Film Your Food. And the top comment I got from Silver Axel 510 was, I definitely felt this. It's integrated to the roots, even in high school, being in a class that encourages creativity, but yet stuns other forms of art. A set curriculum must be made and not in favour of / or for the interests of an individual has, which I think is a great comment. I think one thing which I think they meant was in a class that encourages creativity but yet stunts other forms of art. They said that in high school that was their experience, and a set curriculum should be made and not in favour of or for particular interests of an individual. Wait a minute, did I read that wrong? A secular curriculum must be made and not in favour of or for the interests of an individual has. Oh, I think they mean for the tutor. So the tutor may say, I love Leonardo da Vinci, so all we're going to study is Leonardo da Vinci. And someone who is a student may say, yeah, but I love Maria Abramovic. And then the tutor's saying, well, you either make da Vinci's work or you'll be getting low grades from me. And that's what this person's saying, is that shouldn't be allowed. The curriculum should be a diverse education on art and art history, and not sculpted around a tutor's preferences, which I completely agree with. The next comment actually is in reply, because I say I wholeheartedly agree with you. In the future I might be able to broaden my scope on the sample size I use as anecdotes to support the case against bullying, harassment, unprofessional behaviour which leads to inept educational value. I appreciate your comment, thank you. I think what I mean by that is bringing other people in. I've considered how many people I can reach out to and speak to from university to try to discuss this to an extent, or how I can present what I experienced there and how I feel about the school. And then I had a response from at Kerry Yost 4981, who said, "This explains a lot. I went to CalArts, which was celebrated for its conceptual art legacy. They also are known for their character animation program, and in brackets it says, an extension of the film school, close brackets, which is what I studied. That program had structure and support for individual freedom, and while I liked and admired the fine artists there, they seemed to be encumbered by a narrow, politicized framework that discouraged anything that resembled traditional skill." Exactly. It really looked like a dead end, but for a tiny fraction who might enjoy success doing gallery art. Which I'm curious what gallery art means to Kerry Yost, but because that can be a bit of a spectrum as well. But no, a great comment, and boy did I feel that, as far as it was a dead end for people if they wanted any kind of skill or talent to be grown and nurtured and fed by the course. It wasn't happening. I had a comment from now Thap Thop Theep 2076. Endemic is right. Now, let me just contextualise. I was talking about the problem of saying stop drawing and film your food, and talking about how this was an issue with education, but I think it's a problem throughout education generally, not just in fine art. I've heard stories from Scotland down to London, and I can imagine it's global, it's an endemic problem. This is what I think is the context of what they're responding to. And Thapthorpe Theep 2076 said, "Endemic is right, and it's not just in art either. When I was in secondary school back in the 90s, I wanted to be an artist and loved art class, had some really good teachers and got on really well with one in particular. She asked me what I intended to do when I left school, and at that point in my life I wanted to draw and nothing else, and I was reasonably good at it. I told her I wanted to go to college or uni and study art. She asked me why. I told her I wanted to pursue a career as a cartoonist. She said, do it then. You don't need college or uni to do that. They won't teach you that in art school. Plus you can already do it reasonably well. She said I'd improve under my own steam, and going to uni would just waste my time." This sounds like a good teacher so far. She also told me some really messed up stories, like how she worked for a company designing greeting cards, and when she graduated, they'd reject designs, then she'd see her designs being used and attributed to other artists, plagiarism, etc. She really put me off. I was conflicted about it because she genuinely seemed to care, but was actively putting me off the idea. Anyway, I got into computers, web development, programming after leaving school in a big way, and that became my focus. Went to college and done an HND in computing, and that class was exactly as you describe. Let me just open one more of these. I had one tutor who was great, a chap called Ian, and he knew his stuff. I got on really well with him. The other was inept, couldn't answer even elementary questions. I'd self-taught coding for years at this point. By this point, I lived and breathed it, so was able to answer many questions for students. She came in one morning with a handout she'd cobbled together about HTML and how to build a basic site. The pages stapled out of order or missing, etc. Sorry to laugh, but it does just make me think of this tutor. So yeah, we are experiencing similar problems. Everything was slapdash with her. The guy Ian was always prepared and could answer even the most obscure question. Sadly, we spent more time with her than him, almost like it was intentionally designed to starve us of a real education. An absolute mess she was. I've done other classes relating to building and construction and had similar experiences, one or two knowledgeable tutors and a handful of honestly absolute frauds who seem to know nothing of the subject they are teaching. And yes, there is a very clear pattern to it. But we're not allowed to say it. You'll get what I mean if you read between the lines. Well, I really hope that you draw again, because it sounds like you were good at drawing, and I hate the idea that the industry and the education system deprives the world of potential artists. I mean, think of how ridiculous this is, as we have people out there who love drawing and yet become disincentivized by education. I mean, the opposite of what should be the actual process of a student showing an interest in something. Comment from Gwen, my friend Gwen Lewis 4443. I didn't have anywhere near as bad an experience as you, but there were deficits in the teaching. It could have been a lot more structured in the first year. However, art education was going through a transition and continues to do so. One thing that I would do differently if I was tutoring is look at process. As you say, it's not about whether your outcomes conform to the tutor, but how you get there. There should be drawing, collecting, filming, writing, recording, visual research, no matter what. There's a bottom line for an artist. The process, feeding your creativity, creating frameworks and environments in which to create. Moreover, there were too few people to help students become excellent. We wouldn't see them often enough, and sorry, I almost lost my place then. And they were simply thin on the ground. I struggled to find myself and didn't develop as much as I could have done. I agree that there's a global problem though. There are two things that will exclude people from art college: the requirement for talent and hard work. They want to get people through the door, preferably people with money, and then for those people to be undemanding. I think if you go to Camberwell, the Royal College, the Slade, Goldsmiths, I think you get good teaching there if you're lucky. Sorry, I'm really struggling to read parts of this. I think you get good teaching there if you're lucky, but unless your budget or circumstances enable London life, this is beyond reach. So, I mean, you can already see in that comment how Gwen could structure something far more enriching for students than what I'm relaying is my experience. I think it should be fairly intuitive for people who love art what young people, or people of all ages, need as a rounded art education. You would provide some art history, you would push them outside of their comfort zone, but then you would encourage them to develop and strengthen their skills, and you'd find them where they are and nurture their growth. And what Gwen was saying there is absolutely true, but it's a concern that you'd have to go to certain places to get a decent education, and if you can't afford that, then you just have not even second class, I don't know what class it would be considered, but a lesser education, because you're not in the top echelon of students or society. So sad, but there we are. The last comment on this episode being Stop Drawing and Film Your Food is from Tom Tremaine. And he said, at first I thought this was a report on a certain college and certain course, but as it went on I realised it was a political critique of modern British teaching methods which exist in all schools, colleges and universities. My course was very similar, and the characters you outline are totally interchangeable. The rot began to set in the early 1980s. It's the world we now live in, I'm afraid. Exactly. This is exactly what I was worried about, as far as people can relate to what I'm saying in these episodes, because it's not unique to what I experienced. Everyone will experience greater or lesser stories and events that are similar and do the harm they do. But horrifying to think that this is what we have currently as a common experience for tutors. But thank you so much for the comments, everyone, because it is it's a real, huge addition to the episodes, and I'm not just saying that. It really does add a lot to know that this isn't just speaking into the void, which is what it felt like when I first started, until I started getting comments on the first episode, which was so nice. And then episode 4, which is called My Art is Better Than Your Art, only has 2 comments. It has 3 comments. The first one from Carrie Yost 4981. Bad life drawing classes are worse than no life drawing classes. Have you read Dan Clow's Art School Confidential piece from his comic 8 Ball? Which I love it. Recommendations like that. I haven't read that yet, but I am going to look it up. I intend to, and I appreciate the comment, because things like that can help you reflect more clearly on what you've experienced and communicate better because of how other people express things creatively in their own outlet. I said, you're absolutely correct. Bad life drawing classes can create bad habits and inaccurate reflections on your progress. And the Carriost 4981 said, absolutely, there was a movie adaptation by director Terry Zwigoff, who also adapted Clow's comic story Ghost World. The film is a bit of a disappointment, but the comic is excellent. It's only a handful of pages, so probably easily read online. It's too often that I think film adaptations of comic books are a bit of a disappointment, which is sad, but there we are, that happens. But yeah, I need to look that up. Ghost World. Oh no, that was the other one. So I need to look up what was it called? Art School Confidential? Yeah, Art School Confidential, Dan Clowes, from his comic 8 Ball. I'm going to look that up. The last comment was from my friend Gwen Lewis 4443. Sounds like a disaster. Most of those staff should be removed, replaced, if not disciplined, for breach of contract. I fully understand why you need to make these videos. Good for you for calling this lack of quality out. Thanks, Gwen. Thank you. As always, amazing, beautiful comments. Far better worded than anything that I churn out. But yeah, so the comment that was left on bullying in art school was from my friend Gwen Lewis 4443, and she said there were clear breaches of health and safety, discrimination and education quality. Yeah. That's my response. Yeah. No, there was, and even now when I've done this series, trying to talk as much as I can about what happened in art school, I feel as though there may be a way in the future of doing it better again, either illustrated or with partial interviews from other students to flesh out some of the areas that I either forgot or interpreted differently to how they did. So I don't know. That might be something. I mean, I don't want to spend my whole life talking about art school over and over and over again, but currently it's something which I'm trying to communicate clearer, because I feel as though my first podcast called Studio Buddies, we kind of went through certain problems, but we also talked about small petty things, which I won't bring up in this podcast, because we were trying to give an overview of our experience. We were also trying to go like, that's some negative stuff, here's some positive stuff, and which I think is fair. I'm not doing that in this podcast either, because it's not what this is about. This is about how all the stories lead to the Dirty Corner. So that's why I'm not doing the same kind of overview. But if you're curious, I haven't taken down any of my original podcasts called Studio Buddies. If you go onto my channel and press on playlists, there is a playlist called Studio Buddies, and you can watch all the episodes there. I think there's 16, I'm not sure, maybe 16 episodes. Now, episode 6 of the Dirty Corner, called The Writing is on the Wall, had one comment and it doesn't show up. So I have no idea what it said. I wish I did, but it just wasn't, wasn't made visible. Let me click on it. 17, apparently there's 17 videos for, whoa, apparently there's 17 videos for Studio Buddies, which I didn't realise, so yeah. Which is weird, because there's episode 16. Maybe one of them is part 1 and part 2. That looks like that's the case. I think episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15. Okay. 15 was a reaction video where we had me and my co-host at the time were reacting to Van Gogh Live, or Van Gogh Alive, I think it was called, and that was a 2-parter. So that's why there's 17 videos on there. But if you watch it from episode 1, you'll see that we talk a lot about university for at least 6 or 8 episodes, and then we start to say we need to stop talking about uni because it wasn't good stories. It was kind of moaning, and none of us like moaning, neither of us I should say, not like moaning. We'd rather be optimistic and positive generally, but it was, bearing down on us in a negative way, and that was in the second year when we did that. It got bad in the third year. It got bad in the first year, but it was kind of, it got unstable the longer we were there. Anyway, this has been a long episode, but that's reading through the comments. I really appreciate people commenting on the videos. It does add a lot, and I just wish that there wasn't this problem with YouTube where it removes certain comments. I don't know why that is. Either way, I hope this podcast stays up and doesn't get taken down by anyone who censors, the algorithm or whatever that censors certain content, because this is supposed to be as true as I can make it, even though it is from my vantage point. It is stories from fine art school that's made to be a cautionary tale about the flaws in the education system. And as I always say, all of these stories lead to the Dirty Corner. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.